Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of Ghostly Gossip, the podcast where we discuss all things paranormal and our experiences with them. So to introduce myself, my name is Derry, and I run a group called Devon and Cornwall Paranormal Investigators, or D.C.P.I. Just as a warning, this podcast may include swearing. Today we are chatting with Rob, who runs a YouTube channel called Dead Air TV. He's got quite a few terrifying tales of some incredible places, most of which he investigates completely alone. Okay, so we're welcoming Rob onto Ghostly Gossip today. So Rob, where are you currently in the paranormal world?
Hi, so currently I do a lot of YouTube. That's kind of like the new career path that I went down from the paranormal side. Before that, I was doing a bit of radio before that. And I also do a lot of public events as well with a team up in the northeast of England.
Amazing. And what's your YouTube channel?
So YouTube, it's Dead Air. So the URL on YouTube is just Dead Air TV. So I've been doing that by myself since around about 2018, 2019. So it started off as just exploring the element of YouTube. I was a bit curious about it, and it's only recently it started to sort of take off a little bit more. It's one of those things where YouTube's a bit of a pain. It can take forever. It can be really slow, and then you sort of get the rewards from it a little bit later. So that's what it is at the minute. So my channel is purely from an investigation point. So I'd say probably most locations I go to are Northern England, but I do like to travel around. So I like to sort of meet other paranormal groups who will find places for me to go and record in. But it's purely an investigation channel, so I'll do a lot of the history of the location for maybe like 10 minutes of a video, and then the next 45 minutes will just be an edited, sort of condensed down version of what I experienced when I went and was doing some lone vigils in there.
Amazing. That sounds really, really cool.
I just enjoyed doing paranormal stuff on my own. I know a lot of people go in as groups and teams and duos or whatever, and it's kind of like I've always enjoyed just being by myself. I always find that because your senses are kind of more heightened, so you're listening to things more, you can instantly rule things out, so you know that it's not somebody's coat rustling, for example, someone breathing funny. It's, you hear a noise, you can rule out other people. And I've just always preferred to just be on my own with my own thoughts, and then on camera I'll just talk and probably gibber on a little bit. And I just prefer it. I find it much more fun just going somewhere on my own, whether it's an outdoor location, park up the car somewhere and just walk into the location, or if I hire a venue out to do some filming, and I just like to be on my own. I just love it that way. It's just the way I've been in terms of finding things, and I can rule things out and verify things myself.
God, you're braver than I am.
Yeah, the first few times I used to get really nervous about it. So I remember the first proper inversion I did was back in the days in the studio, and myself and a friend, we put this idea forward that we were going to do, it was like a student bar, but it was a converted like warehouse that had been used for smuggling in Sunderland. So it was quite like, it had a bit of history to it, and there were stories to it. And looking back now, it's kind of like, it's a student bar with an upstairs, downstairs, with the light switched off. We'd have no problem going in. But I remember being so nervous about it, like back in the day. And then now it's kind of like, you just don't get that. Yeah. My philosophy, if something does happen, if I do see whatever, it's like, because I've got it on camera, that will be like the definite proof that you need. So I'm like, yeah, if something scary happened to me, it's like I'm not alone, I've got a camera. So yeah, it works that way as well.
That's really cool. We don't do much videoing, to be fair. It's definitely something we need to do more of, I think, with our group, yeah. Absolutely. But I'm not volunteering to be going anywhere on my own. Thank you very much. So, what got you in? How did you get into the paranormal world, Rob?
Can't actually put a definite time on it. I think I've always had a slight interest in it from being really little. I've got memories of, I don't know if you know this, but I think someone's put all the episodes on YouTube or something since. There used to be a TV show on in the 90s called Strange But True.
Okay.
I think Michael Aspel was the presenter of it, and I never actually got to watch it. I wasn't allowed to watch it because it was past bedtime, so I was always in bed by the time it was on. But I can always vaguely remember promos for it that used to be on the TV, like, this is coming up on whatever night it was going to be on. And I can always remember just as maybe a 5 or 6 year old, the lady that sort of levitated out the apartment window, she's been abducted by aliens. And it's only recently that's just clicked on me because they brought the Netflix documentary out about the Manhattan abduction.
Oh, okay.
Brings back my childhood memories. I just remember seeing a flashback of this sort of reconstruction of a lady being abducted out of an apartment window. But I used to always want to watch it, and I was never allowed to because it was on like too late. And I think I've always had a bit of a fascination with ghosts and monsters and whatever as a youngster, and it's kind of something that's always stuck with me. I think maybe some people might grow out of it when they're into Halloween stuff, but I've just always had an interest when people have had a story. My grandmother, for example, on that side of the family, there's always been a famous story in the family that dates back to the Second World War. And even when I was a little kid, I would go and visit my grandma, and I would always ask about that story. I'd say, "Tell me about the story," and then people would say, "Oh, you keep asking that every time you come here." I was like, "I know." Every time I go, I wanted to know more, so I started finding more details about it. I was just fascinated by it, and I think from that point on, I think I've just always been interested in the fact that there's possibly something ghosts, there's the supernatural. And then up here in Newcastle, we had a very famous late night phone-in radio show called Night Owls. It gets mentioned by a lot of like Cheryl Cole talking about listening to it, Anton Deck grew up listening to it. It's a very traditional thing in Newcastle that Night Owls was this phone-in show, and it was people just rang in and talked about rubbish a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But every Halloween, people would always ring in. There was always ghost stories only, and people would phone in this late night phone-in show and tell their ghost stories. And it was presented by a guy called Alan Robson. And every Halloween, he would have people in haunted locations. So it would be like Chillingham Castle. He would take some skeptics, for example, and just put them in Chillingham Castle. And I used to listen to this every Halloween as a kid, taping it off the radio kind of thing. And I was obsessed with it, absolutely obsessed with all these stories. This is going back before the Most Haunted era. And then as faith's gone on and as life's gone on, I've got to work with Alan a few times in radio and doing sort of the ghost hunt stuff. So it was kind of like I met him, and it was kind of, we know each other quite well now. But I grew up listening to him, and we've helped each other out doing various things and bits and pieces. But yeah, for me, that was introducing me to places like Chillingham Castle, which has got such a reputation around here. So I grew up hearing all the stories about it. And then obviously the Most Haunted era came out, where everything was televised, and all these locations I'd heard about, I was suddenly seeing them on TV, and like I've got this image in my mind of what everything looked like, and then you see it, and then you start to visit them and go on ghost hunts and stuff, and I've just always been hooked on it.
That's amazing. It's kind of like always been a little bit of a calling then.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where I don't talk about it a lot in general life. I won't go to work, or I won't go and sit with friends from school and sit and talk about it, because I always think people judge you about, people think, oh, that weirdo who believes in ghosts or whatever. I've always been very sort of to myself about it. I've always been in my own little bubble about how I've gone about it. But I've made my friends in the paranormal side of it.
Yeah.
So I've got friends that side of it, and then I've got my other friends who are like from school or from other life or from work, and I kind of keep them a little bit separate. But yeah, I've always had this interest in what if when you die this happens, what if, and what really happens. And I think it's always just been in my mind, and I've always had a bit of an interest in it. But like I say, everyone talks about the Most Haunted being that point when it sort of exploded and everybody got into ghost hunting. That comes in like waves. So like we had like Strange But True, and what was it, like the Pipes, the BBC documentary back in the early 90s. I think it comes up and down at the minute. We're going back up with like Uncanny. That's really popular at the minute.
Yeah, massively so.
And I think we're starting to see it. You see a lot of paranormal groups now. You see it becomes more popular, and then it'll sort of like fade off a little bit, and then something new will come up and it becomes massive again. But I think Most Haunted is definitely the one that really put it, like, made ghost hunting massive again.
Yeah, absolutely. It really kind of lit the fire under it, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it made it so like everyone could go and do it. Because before that, nobody went ghost hunting. It was always like, say, if somebody off the radio would do it, or to get access into some of these places was near impossible. And then they kind of did it, and a lot of these venues suddenly realised there's a market for it, and now events happen. So I think that has been a massive game changer.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And you know what, quite a lot of people on the podcast, I've spoken to, it does seem to, it's either been a consistent in their life since they were a kid and they can't really remember where it came from, or maybe there was like a family member. I've only spoken to one lot of people who have said it was a particular event when they were an adult that sparked it. Everyone else has had it from being a kid, had the interest from when they were little. Generally told that it wasn't allowed to be an interest, and then when they got older were like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, there's one incident that happened in my life when I was 3 years old, and I've always wanted to remember it. I've never remembered it, and it was a week after my father died. Apparently, I was in my bedroom. Someone could hear me talking. My mum could hear me talking, and she walked in the room and said, "Who are you talking to?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just talking to Grandad. He's got a stone in his hand. He's come to say goodbye." But the backstory of that is, when I was little, like a toddler, we used to go out for walks, and my granddad would go and find stones. We used to bring stones back to the house, and we always find like the best stone.
Amazing.
And that was, I think, it was the day before his funeral. But I've got no recollection of this like happening. I can remember him. I can remember like vaguely being at the house and, you know, him as a person. But I've got absolutely no recollection of this event. But apparently it did happen, and that's always been in the back of my mind. Like, did that happen? Obviously, as a toddler, you don't know if that someone's a ghost if you're talking to someone. But I've always wanted to know like what was really happening. Was I just a toddler imagining things and talking to myself, or did I genuinely see him? And it really does bother me that I don't know that.
Yeah, I can imagine that's frustrating. However, I'm on team. He definitely came to have a little visit.
Yeah, I can believe it. As people have said that when you're 3, you can't form a lie like that.
Yeah.
You kind of oddly, you talk rubbish at times, but it's like you couldn't make a story like that and have facts in there and things that and the timing of it as well was just a bit strange. But yeah, I've always wanted to know like what happened. Where did I see him? Was he just standing here? Was he in my mind? I've always just been curious about it, and I'll never know.
Wow, maybe he'll visit you again and let you know.
Yeah, maybe.
Keep asking. So I know you've visited some pretty cool places. What's been your favourite place you've visited?
Chillingham's always going to have a place like neck by my heart because it's my local big haunted place, really. It's where I did the first ever ghost hunt. You know, I grew up listening to all the stories, but places, I mean, I went to Romania back end of last year, so I did a lot of things with wanted to create some content exploring locations linked to the real Dracula. They were incredible locations, but I'm not getting that haunted vibes from them. That they weren't really spooky or creepy. They were just historical locations. But I think the one that I was obsessed with the most was probably Aleister Crowley's house up in Scotland.
Okay.
So I know you've got another Crowley house down in Cornwall.
We do.
But this one up in Scotland that he lived in for about 3 years. Then he bought it just to do his rituals in. And the house, when I went up, because I always get permission if I'm filming, I would never just urbex a location. I would always get permission, and I, went up there, did some interviews with the people working on the site, things like that. And this was just after it had burned down the second time, the second mysterious fire. So it was still technically a building site with scaffolding all over the place, and the staff, well, the volunteers that were rebuilding it all had stories that stuff was happening. They kept seeing a black dog in the garden, things like that.
Amazing.
I went up there, and I honestly think in one night I never had so much. There was just so many things going wrong and so many things happening. So I wanted to get a drone shot of the house because it's on the banks of Loch Ness. I wanted a certain shot where the drone was going to go up from the house, and you were going to see the top of the house, and then Loch Ness would just appear in the background. And I wanted this shot like badly. I was like, set the drone up, got the angles all right, and it kept coming up with an error message on the screen. It was just saying a magnetic compass failure, like interference.
Oh.
And I'm like, this has never ever happened ever because I fly drones a lot. This has never happened before. And then while I was up in Scotland for a week, I flew it all over Loch Ness, and it worked fine, but it wasn't having it. It wasn't going over Aleister Crowley's house.
That's amazing.
It was like the middle of summer, red hot day. And then at night when I did the investigation inside the house, I don't know what it was. I had the camera on a tripod, and I was running the spirit box session. And there's tarpaulin like all over the house because it was being rebuilt. And then all of a sudden, like this wind just blew it. Like the whole thing, I had to grab the tripod because it was going to fall over. I was like, that's a sign. That's like something's weird going on here. There was a bit of scaffolding. Like I only saw this when I was editing the video afterwards. There's like a metal pole in the corner of the room.
Yeah.
And if I'd seen this at the time, I would have just got out. But you see a shadow go past this metallic pole, and obviously with it being metal, you see the dark shadow going across it. And I'm like, this was in complete darkness, so the only light in the room is technically infrared light. There's no light from outside, but yet you see this something dark go in front of this metal pole. And I'm like, that's impossible. Something would have to have walked between the light on my camera, the infrared light, and that pole, but there was nothing there. So something went past this pole, and I'm in the house on my own. And it was like, that was weird. And then everything about that night was just, so in the graveyard, because there's the old cemetery just over the road from the house where we used to do a lot of these rituals. It came through, I heard the words, your foot, my foot. And I just thought, oh, it's just gibberish coming out of a spirit box. And it was afterwards I got into the hotel and I took my shoe off. You see like 3 like holes in my skin on the top of my foot that were bleeding, or had been bleeding. And it was like, it looks like I'm being very sort of like stereotypical. It looks like a such and such, but it looked like a claw shape on my foot. And when it had said earlier that night, your foot, my foot, and that just sounded weird. So that happened. And then, well, I mentioned earlier in the podcast about growing up listening to Alan Robson doing his. He'd gone up to Boleskine a few years before, but he'd gone up, with the idea of, I'm going to stir it up here. So he, trashed Aleister Crowley's book and cursed him and did this and that. And from that night on, he always had this really bad cough, and he's never got rid of it. And doctors have been unable to tell him what's been wrong. He's adamant he had it since that night in Boleskine, in the graveyard. And again, through the spirit box, it sounds like it comes up with the word Alan Robson. It comes through. And I sent him the clip, and he was like, that's weird.
Oh, wow.
The whole thing, I mean, he did something where he left a voice recorder inside. There's a little building in the graveyard where they used to store bodies before they were buried to protect them from grave robbers. Because that grave robbing was like a big deal back in Scotland in that sort of time. So there's it's like a little shed, but it's a brick shed, and there's like a window, but it's only big enough to slide a coffin in and out. You can't walk inside this building. And he put his voice recorder in there, and you can hear it getting moved around when he's listening to it back, like it's fumbled and there's noises and all sorts. But it was all bricked up when I was there. But that's where I was stood when it happened, when I said it. But yeah, that place alone, I think they're actually at the point where they're ready to reopen it, and they're going to open it to the public to do guided tours and do the whole Aleister Crowley, Led Zeppelin kind of tours around there again. But it's, I would advise anybody that's up there in the Highlands, like in Inverness area, you've got to go and see Loch Ness, and then go and see Boleskine House. It's incredible.
Oh, mate, I'm booking my ticket now. No, it sounds amazing. It really does. And to seem to have that consistency, and watching that back must have been a bit of a heart-wrenching moment. Oh God, I carried on staying there.
It's funny, there's people have done videos. When I was there, I obviously had permission to film, but in the daytime when I was doing the interviews and you stand and you get the general B-roll footage of the house from all the angles and stuff. Whilst I was there, 2 separate people turned up thinking they were going to see the house to urbex it, and one had driven all the way up to Inverness from Bristol.
Oh wow.
And they were, at the time, the lady was just like, well, if you give me a tenner, I'll give you a walk around the house. And she was doing these guided tours. And then another one turned up maybe half an hour later after that one had gone. So people go up there and hop the fence and go into it all the time. Obviously, you won't be able to now. But yeah, there's videos around that are circulating where people have urbexed the house. And there was one guy in particular who said that since he went to that house, I don't know what happened, I haven't watched it, but he said that nothing but bad stuff has happened in his life, breakdown of relationships, friends have turned against him. He said, since I've been to that house, I don't know what I've said or what I've done, but stuff's happened where I'm cursed. I obviously don't know if that's just someone on YouTube trying to get some clicks or whether that's genuine, but they always say if you go to Crowley's house, you've got to be really careful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's mind-blowing. Maybe I won't go to the one in Cornwall. I'll let someone else go instead. I don't want to be cursed. I totally believe in those things. I totally believe that, if you're not respectful, not personally, I've seen when I've been holding ghost hunts, I've seen attachments and things trying to attach, and, and that's just from bog standard places, never mind kind of the calibre of Aleister Crowley. Yeah, it's terrifying. That's definitely a place that I want to go. So that would definitely be your top place.
I think, whether they ever allow paranormal groups to go in there, I'd absolutely love it if they did. But at the minute, I think they've got a Facebook page, the group that are rebuilding the house, and they keep posting updates on it, because there was once a time where they were trying to raise money to build the roof back on. So they were selling bits of brick from the house, and you could get a certificate saying authentic Aleister Crowley, like stonework from actual taken from the house. So people were actually buying bits of the house. It was interesting, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, the thing is, they'd make a lot of money if they let the paranormal people in, that's for certain.
Yeah, the only problem is it's so far away. I mean, even I'm up in Newcastle, and it's still another 5.5 hour drive north for me. So you would have to be really committed for a weekend to go up there, but it would honestly be worth it.
Yeah, I'll go wherever. I'm not bothered. I'll sleep in my car on the way back down. Like, for an experience like that, you know, no amount of hours of driving is worth it, if you ask me. Like, it'd be well worth it.
Definitely. Inverness is nice as well, so even if it's worth a little weekend breakaway.
The next question is, what is the scariest place you visited? Is it the same place?
I'd probably say, yeah. I would say I was genuinely, like, on edge there. Like, there's not many places put me in that state of mind where I'm not 100% comfortable. Like it's obviously not sounding like cocky or big-headed. I genuinely respect everyone that goes into these places, but I've been in places before where I'm on my own and I'm genuinely getting stuff, but I'm not. It doesn't frighten me.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, before Christmas, I was in Ireland, and I was doing some work doing some filming in an old nuns convent over there. So for legal reasons, I'm not allowed to say it was abandoned. So the owner says I've got to say it's not in use at the minute.
Yeah.
Their insurance reasons. So this not in use at the minute former nuns convent it was an amazing building. So much stuff that there's a paranormal group that have been there and have done it a few times, and I've got amazing sort of apparition photographs of a sort of full-bodied shadow in one of the rooms. Some incredible evidence. And there was stuff happening when I was there. There was knocks, bangs. And it's like, I would say that would be scary, but I don't think it frightens me anymore. I think I quite enjoy it. I suppose it's like a thrill seek. It's like people jump out of a plane, don't they? And like that's their thrill.
Yeah.
For me, I would love nothing more than to have it. So like, there's not many places that would scare me, unless it was like something physical or something that, you know, like some places you go to, there's genuinely like a threat of, you know, is there living people hanging around there? Hellfire Club in Dublin, and I was genuinely more on edge about other people coming that could be there. You hear stories that people go up there and have their own Ouija board sessions in there. The guy who owned the Airbnb that I stayed with told me, he said, if you go up there any time in October, you will find kids go up there, teenagers go up there, and they'll take Ouija boards in there, and they're trying to contact the dead in there. And I was more worried about what happened if I was up there at night, because I was on my own at the time, and other people just rocked up. You don't know who these people are. I'm probably more on edge about that than anything supernatural. Certainly, like outdoor locations, I hate the idea of coming across other people when I'm there, just because you don't know how they're going to react. So funny enough, when I was at the Hellfire Club, there was actually someone else did turn up while I was there. Turned out he was an absolutely like nice guy. Had a conversation with him, told me a little bit of history. But he must have heard I had a spirit box on, and I was just talking away. And I came out and got chatting to him, and he said, what are you doing? Are you looking for bats? And I said, not quite. I'm just doing some filming. And he was like, oh, right, yeah. But yeah, that's probably more frightened of the living, actually, than the dead. But in terms of the location, I'd probably say Crowley's house.
Yeah, sounds like it.
But I suppose if you wanted a scary location that you could book as a paranormal team, I would probably give my own, say, Chillingham Castle. I think I've never been there and had quiet nights. I think you always get stuff up there. Probably done it about 6 or 7 times now. And every time you come away and you think, what about that? That was weird. So I've slept at Chillingham in one of the apartments, and I've had a cupboard door that opened during the night. And I've actually seen it, like not seen it happen, but I've woke up and I've seen it open. And then you go on the Facebook group and you see that happens all the time in that certain room. Like people say that cupboard door opens. I've heard the very first time we ever did a radio show there, going back 10 years, we actually got an MP3 recording of folk music coming from the woods outside. Like you can hear a harp playing. I said, but like folk music, it's like a medieval harp playing. And if you know the area, you know it's just the castle. There's nothing next to it. There's no population. It's just that, and then the woods around it. And we couldn't debunk that. It was just like it was coming from the woods. and it was like someone was just playing music, and that was weird. The very first time I ever went to Chillingham was on a tour. It wasn't even a ghost hunt, and there was about 10 of us in the chapel, and they had this like big curtain pulled over the doorway, like a really thick curtain that had to move, like as if there was someone's hand on the other side pushing it.
Oh.
And we all stood around and watched it for at least 2 or 3 minutes, and it was like it looked as if there was a hand pushing itself through the curtain. And then the tour guide pulled the curtain back, and it was just like it's just a doorway that leads down to the minstrels gallery. That was when I was about 15, 16 years old, and that's always stuck with me. And when you're that age, you kind of think, "Oh, ghost hunting's fun. This must happen all the time." So, but yeah, you always get stuff in Chillingham. It's one of those places where you'll get people who'll say, "Oh, the history's all made up, and this didn't really happen." But then people go there, and stuff happens. It's just it's so expensive as well to do. I think it's about £1,200 or £1,300 to hire it out for the night as a ghost group. But groups that do go there always come back and say they get loads of weird stuff happen.
Yeah, it's definitely on my to visit list.
Yeah, even if you just, there's a lot of people now, they book it. They book it at the apartments. This is like a hack, by the way. Like the castle probably won't like me telling you this, but you can book the apartments. I always book the grey apartment because it's the creepiest. If you're staying as a guest, you've got access to the castle, like certain areas, because you've got to get into the castle. So you always get access through the area where the dungeon is. So I always just tell people, if you want to investigate Chillingham Castle, don't book it for £1,200. Just book like the apartment for maybe £250, and then split it with like 4 or 5 mates, and you can all sleep in there, and then you've got free room in the castle.
That is a good hack. That is definitely what I will do, because I definitely can't afford to hire the whole thing out myself. Yeah, it's definitely one of my places that's on my list to visit, 100%. You know, it's obviously quite far from us, so we'd have to stay anyway, so the apartment will work really well.
You've got to do it. I say it should be on everyone's bucket list who's into the paranormal, just because of the reputation that Chillingham. I mean, they even used Chillingham for years. I think it was even the most haunted intro. They used the steps of Chillingham Castle when they sort of like they had this like intro music. They always used that sort of like shot of the steps going up to Chillingham. But the first time I went there, it was so my sister got me it as a birthday present when I was just a teenager. It was like a guided tour. She knew I was really into it. I'd never been before. And I think it was like because my birthday is in January, so it was like completely dark, and it had been closed to the public all day because they don't reopen like till the springtime. And I just remember going in the car. I didn't know I'd been going. I didn't know I'd got the present to go. And I just remember turning up in the car, and you see like the castle, and they've got the torches all lit up, like the fire on the entrance, and you see it, and it looks exactly how like you imagine it's going to look on from TV, and you just see it like this silhouette of the castle just appear.
Amazing.
Like honestly, if that's your first place you ever go as a ghost hunt, it spoils it because you expect everywhere else to be like that, and it never is.
Yeah, it just sets the bar really high.
Yeah, you'll be in like some village hall or somewhere, like doing a ghost hunt, and like it wasn't as good as that time we did Chillingham.
I look forward to be able to say that one day.
It should be everyone's bucket list. You need to go.
If it beats Bronnegarth, I will be impressed.
I mean, I'm biased, but I think it is. I think the downside of it is there's a lot of people who say that history's not verified, and they have kind of like made their own history. But even the history that is verified, it's dark. It's like you've got the hanging woods outside where they did hang Scottish soldiers. The whole place has just got that dark all about it. Like stuff happened there. There is the Edward II room because he did stay there when he went up and carried out his massacre of the Scots. Everything's there.
No, it definitely sounds an amazing place, and you've definitely sold it even more now. Yeah, my partner in crime will be like, right, we're going. Let's pack up. Let's book.
No, if you go on their website and look for the accommodation, I think it's like a year in advance now because it's so popular. People who want to stay in the apartments, it's like you go on their website and you try and find the availability. I think it's something ridiculous, like a year in advance. But I was lucky that when I went and I filmed it for YouTube, it was in 2021, and the people who'd been staying in that apartment had cancelled it because one of them had got COVID. So there'd been a cancel. I just took it straight away. I was like, I didn't even think about it. I just took it. I think she was like kind of surprised, the lady that does the check-ins. She was like, "Oh, is there just one of you?" And I'm like, "Yep." It's like, oh, usually like people come and like stay here like with 5 or 6 people. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just here on my own.
Oh, that's amazing. Evidently, this is your favourite place, and I can definitely tell why from what you've said about it. But what are some other places you'd love to investigate? Your top 5?
That I haven't done yet.
Yep, that you haven't done yet.
I'm curious to do more about the Jamaica Inn. I know that's down your end.
Yeah.
But I've heard the stories about it, and I know it's very difficult for if you want to get in there and like do it for YouTube. But just out of curiosity, and obviously it's got a reputation. I know it's probably one of your top places in Cornwall, so that would be like on the list somewhere. I'm not sure. I'd quite like to go across the island and do Lep Castle. I was never that bothered about it, and then when I went and I met the guys at Cork Supernatural, they told me that they just kept picking this place up, and they were saying that's Lep Castle's meant to be like really, really active. So that's kind of on my list of places to do. And for years, I've been saying this for about 4 or 5 years. I know it's not 100% legal, but I want to do the Plague Island of Pavelia in Venice.
Okay.
So Alan Robson from Night Owls did it with Sky TV on a show called Scariest Places on Earth. So he kind of like knows the island, and he knows how to get on and off the island. So you've got to be quite sort of clever about sort of how you get there. But yeah, it's meant to be illegal to go there, but loads of like urbexers have been and done it. It's meant thousands of people have died of the plague on this island. It was where they sent you if you got the plague in Venice. So again, just for the bucket list factor, I'd love to go and do that.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. To be fair, we've done, well, obviously not the island, but we did a place called Dead Street School, not with D.C.P.I. I was with another company. I went and did it, and it's a school, but it's built on a plague pit.
Oh wow!
It's in Hitchin in the UK.
Yeah.
And yeah, just the activity, just the sheer amount of people that unfortunately are buried there. It's just a whole different energy. It's very strange.
It sounds very similar to is it Smethwick Baths in Birmingham, but they closed that down. So it was an old swimming pool in Birmingham, and apparently that's built on a plague pit, and it was also where they used to bring bodies during the Second World War during the air raids.
Okay.
But when I was in Birmingham, had the Commonwealth Games quite recently, they built a brand new like aquatic centre, and then they just decided that all the other swimming pools in Birmingham would just close. So I think it's empty, but I don't think you can. I think they're going to knock it down. But I really wanted to go there, and like, I think those days are gone. But yeah, plague pits. There's quite a few around. Well, I suppose all towns and cities have got them, but there's a few around my way where you hear about there's meant to be a plague pit around here. But yeah, obviously with them being all mass buried. In fact, there's a village. This would be interesting because even people around here don't know about it. There's a village it's sort of near Darlington, Teesside way.
Okay.
Where it used to be called the Plague Village. So it's a very quiet little village, and it's on a river, like a stream type river. So what happened was all the plague victims in the local area used to get taken here, and they used to be brought in by boat. So you can still visit the spot now. So the guy would bring the bodies on board, and he would dock it in the village, and he would ring a bell, and that meant everyone had to go in their house because there was plague bodies coming in. And they reckon, I don't know how true this is, but the non-paranormal websites say it's true, so it must be true. If you go on the village green, you can actually see a bump if you like get eye level with it, where there's meant to be so many bodies buried beneath it. And apparently it's true. I can't remember the name of the village now, but if you Google it, it'll come up. But it's near sort of Darlington way. I'd love to sort of like find out if there's places around there that's haunted, but I've never really found any.
That's incredible, isn't it? It's crazy. It's crazy that we build on top of these things like it'll be fine.
The actual walkway, I think it's still got the original walkway of like Dead Man's Walkway. Like it's a tiny little cut that goes from the river into the village green. And apparently someone said it's like you can still see where the bell used to be, that they would ring the bell to say that they were bringing dead bodies in.
That's amazing. Oh, you're adding so many to my list now today, though. God, I'm going to end up having to be up that way for like a week.
Yeah. Oh, you should do. You should come up.
Every night of the week, new place to hunt. That'd be amazing. So is there anywhere you wouldn't investigate? I kind of get the sense that you would pretty much go anywhere by yourself, which, if you ask me, is crazy.
I think in terms of like what I would do for my own content, it would be like it would have to kind of, there is a sort of criteria in that I would have to verify that some of the history that people are talking about is true. So when you hear a lot of places that say, Harry, this happened. So obviously I won't name the place, but there's a former school near me that is now like a community centre, and all the paranormal groups are like keen to get into it. And they keep saying that when children in like certain time eras died, the families would have to pay for the funeral, but if they sent the kids to school to die, then the government paid for the funeral. So there's this building that, I don't know whether they're trying to use it as a marketing tool or not, but they keep saying that, oh, this is, people used to send their kids to die in the school. And it's just a little primary school, like an old primary school. And I've always just been very sort of like skeptical about it, like how much of that's true. But people literally sending their kids on death's door into school. I always have to like believe the history in order to do it. So there's a lot of places, not specifically that one, but you hear stories and claims and you're like, I don't know. I think for that purpose, I would deliberately sort of like back away from it. I would only do something if I knew that I was going to talk about the history and not sound like I'm making it up, kind of stuff.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
there's, it's hard. I suppose it's hard for us down here because we've got Dartmoor National Park, which is massive and so old, and there's so many legends and stories and folklore, and all those things that make it. We've got stories of hellhounds and women that killed their husbands and made a carriage out of bones, and just all kinds of crazy legends that can never be proven, can never be disproven. But when you do get that kind of modern day, because there's a particular church we visit in Buckfastleigh near us called Holy Trinity Church, and apparently there was a squire there, and he sold his soul to the devil, and he like raped and murdered and all these horrible things, and he had hellhounds, and we visit there, and it's a very, very active place. And then they did like scans of the layers of the soil and the floor, and the whole church is built on a medieval burial site.
Okay.
So they've got the 3D scans that show that underneath this poor church there's actually hundreds of skeletons where they built the church on top of them. And so like when I found that out, I was kind of like, okay, I can see where this evidence is coming from a bit more now. There's a factual, thing here of, there's a mass amount of people that will have been disturbed as such. And I'm like, okay, that piques my interest a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm always very cautious about graveyards because there's this whole thing, isn't there, about, I mean, I have done graveyards before, but only in like certain cases where it's like, there's a lot of people who are a bit funny about whether you go in there and what you're doing in there, especially with the if there's recent dead. But graveyards are another one I'm a bit unsure about. I've done like Greyfriars in Edinburgh, and I've done one in Northumberland at Woodhorn. There's a graveyard there that's got loads of stories. It's an old graveyard. It never gets used anymore. But I'm still unsure about graveyards, just on the whole idea of going in there when there's like other graves in there. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like,
yeah, no, I'm with you. To be fair, Holy Trinity is the only one we do. We haven't kind of done. I think maybe some of our team went to another one the other week, but yeah, they tend to be really old graveyards that aren't in use, and that have some sort of history, legend, story. I mean, like the Holy Trinity is said, it's not said to be built on any ley lines, so it's a really odd place in terms of where the rest of the churches kind of are in the UK. It's been hit by lightning 3 times, it's been burnt down 3 times. So there's like a lot of weird history about it. It's kind of like, and when they built the church, in like old diaries and like public paperwork, there's people objecting to the church being built there at all. Everyone's like, you can't build it there.
Yeah.
And, that goes way back with these diaries and these notes saying, that they're against, I suppose, like we have planning permission now, and the community is like, no, don't build that church there. And it's like, well, why? Why were they thinking that at that time when they would have had religion as their main belief? Why are they so against that church being there?
Yeah.
It makes you think.
It just reminds me of something I got told when I was up at the Crowley House in Scotland. So obviously the house got burnt down and they had to get planning permission to rebuild it again. So Inverness Council, during like COVID times, all of their meetings were like on Zoom. So anybody could like log in and watch. So it was always like wheelie bin collections or whatever, and like literally nobody was interested, so nobody ever went on. And then when it came up that the Aleister Crowley house at Boleskine was like needed planning permission to be granted. I think they said something like 6,000 people were watching the stream, and there was so many objections to it. Like people going, "Don't build that evil place. It's just evil. Knock it down," and all. So just that meeting alone was. But yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't believe knocking the buildings down does anything, personally.
Yeah.
It's the ground you're on. Whatever happened there for me is still very much there a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Whether the building still exists or not. It's like by us, we used to have an asylum, and they've built loads of houses on it, and people have reported all this crazy stuff happening in their new builds, and I'm like, well, you are built on top of an old asylum. What were you expecting?
Like, if you look at this, where we've had, there's an old asylums near me. There's one called St. Mary's, and it was all the airbexers used to go up there and do it because it was an abandoned asylum, and it got knocked down, and there's a housing estate there now. But you look at America, you watch all the ghost shows in America, and all the old asylums they keep. And it's like they keep them, and they like let them out for events, and paranormal groups go in there. We don't. We just knock them all down. And I think the only one that we've kept is Newsham Park.
It's sad. It's really sad.
Yeah, well, like a lot of these places, you think, keep them, and I don't know whether they just think there's no money in it. But in America, it seems to work. I know they've probably got a lot more land to build new stuff on. But as you see all these American TV shows and all these old trans-Allegheny lunatic asylums or whatever, and it's like they just keep them there and they let people go on guided tours of them.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't seem to have much space to keep our history alive in some circumstances, do we? Which is a shame.
Yeah. But in terms of any place I wouldn't do, the only one that really comes to mind, I mean, I won't name the place, but there's a very famous house that all the paranormal groups up north go to.
Yeah.
When I say a house, on a very normal estate. And I have been there, but I haven't been inside it. I drove past it once and I stopped for a picture outside of it. But again, it's just that you hear stories. It's very split up here, 50-50. You get the people who say it's a load of rubbish and the people who say that it's genuine, but they make a lot of money off it anyway. So there's always a paranormal group in there every night. I think they charge about £600 to sleep there. But the story is, obviously, there's meant to be a monk that was buried in a well, and whether the house is genuinely built on top of that well, no one's ever proved it, but paranormal groups always say it is. But again, it's one of those where I wouldn't spend the money on it.
Yeah.
Or my philosophy is that the family lived there in the 1960s, were chased out by a poltergeist, and all this happened, and it's terrifying. And you think that the amount of paranormal, there's someone in there. There'll be someone in there tonight. There'll be someone in there at the weekend, and you never see any evidence come out of it where you would suggest that this is the most haunted house in Britain, which has always put me off just from that point of view. But again, I've always sat on the fence, but I probably lean more sceptical with that side of that place. But that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I mean, to be fair, a lot of people say for them, Shepton Mallet Prison is a massive place in terms of activity. They get so much there. I've been 4 times. The best I've had is a cell door slam. And a thermal imaging camera picked up a full body walking down. Yes, it was very cool. But I don't get activity there personally. I just haven't experienced that. I find the smaller places that you don't expect to be absolutely insane are the ones that are the most active for me.
What you've just said there is what someone said to me not that long ago. I think it was one of the paranormal teams in Ireland said it to me. Said they don't like some of the old castles. So you go to these 1,000-year-old castles that are just literally stone ruins or long stone corridors, and they say, and it kind of can be true. You get less in there, then you'll go to a building that's maybe 100 years old, which by our definition isn't that old, and you can get more. I totally get that.
Yeah, for me, one of the most active places I've been was Tewkesbury Town Hall. It's just a town hall in the middle of a street. That was one of the most insane nights in terms of evidence I have ever had, and experience as well. Personal experience. It was just a little town hall. Do you know what I mean? But for me, that's up there. That was incredible, and nobody really goes. It's not one of these kind of most famous. Nothing like that. It was just kind of a random one.
Maybe I can get that as well. A lot of these places are very commercial. They will play on it. And as more TV shows go there and paranormal groups go there, they bump the price up. And then you get these places that you find that are hidden gems, and they kind of like the people who run them don't really know the paranormal world very well, so they'll just say, "Oh yeah, you can hire it out the same price as like a birthday party or something," and then you get in there and it's like it's so active. I know what you mean. Like,
yeah.
And it's kind of like the places that advertise the ghosts are kind of like sometimes can be the least haunted places to go.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Absolutely insane. I love finding those random little ones that end up really, really good, but unfortunately they're getting harder and harder to find.
As well, because I book a lot of them for a public group as well, and you find a lot of these places, and then you create an event, and there's like zero interest, and you're trying to get like ticket sales, and you're like, "Come on, guys, who wants to come to this event at the such and such place?" And they're like, "Yeah, but we've never heard of it before." So I think a lot of it as well, you kind of have to sort of like pump it up a bit and hype the sales up. But I know what you mean. You get a little buzz when you find a place that nobody else has been to before.
Absolutely. So we hunt in the oldest pub in Plymouth, which is naval town. So there was a lot of like press gangs, things like that. Like it's tiny. We can only fit like 20 people in there because it's so small. It doesn't sell great, but every time we go, I mean, every single time we've been, you've at least, it's very traditional. They've got like the tankards hanging on the ceiling on hooks.
Yeah.
Behind the bar. Every time we go, they'll be swinging, they'll be moving. Amazing activity.
Yeah.
But it's because it's a tiny place on a little street in Plymouth that nobody really goes to or hears of. It doesn't sell well, and I'm like, guys, you're missing out. Like, this is ace. You're missing out.
Yeah, they just want to go to the places that they've seen on TV.
Yeah, but the hope is we visit those places, we get cool evidence, and then from that, it hopefully builds. If not, great. I'm still having a wonderful time.
Yeah, and I suppose even if they don't sell, and when you get like a very small group, it's kind of more of an intimate kind of paranormal night. You kind of less
Oh,
people.
absolutely. And I tend to prefer that. I tend to find that the more people in one place, the less activity you get, which is a bit strange.
Yeah, I think as well, a lot of people, like, I don't know if you get this as well, you've got to like build your trust with people when you go in. If you take 20 people on a ghost hunt, you're always going to get even if it's just one or two or a handful of people that you think, I don't trust you in terms of like Ouija boards or doing tablets or anything like that. I just think you're the type, I pick them out straight away. I don't know if it's an instinct, but you always just, in the back of your mind, you see them walk in the door and you just know straight away who you trust and who you don't. But yeah.
I do like doing team hunts. I like small, intimate kind of ones.
Yeah.
More than I like the big ones. But, sometimes you need the bigger hunts to get into bigger places, because you couldn't afford it otherwise. It's one of those, isn't it? It's a double-edged sword sometimes.
Yeah. So for us, we find that some of the bigger places to go, like if we did Chillingham Castle, because it's so expensive to hire it, you've got to bump the ticket prices up. And that's just to break even with. So we don't pay the investigators. We're all doing it as volunteers.
Yeah, same as us.
We don't have that pressure of having to pay like the investigators to be there, which would obviously mean putting the ticket prices even higher. So we literally just charge it to break even, and then maybe get some food and snacks on for guests. So that's how we've done it. But we find that when we do the bigger places, we barely break even, and it's when you do these little places where you can then sort of make a little bit on top of that, and then put that towards the next venue.
Yeah, that's exactly how we work. So none of us take any kind of payment. The only thing that we do occasionally is if we're going really, really far, we will put a bit towards petrol. We provide refreshments so that people can keep their energy up, especially if we're there for 6-7 hours. And then any money that comes in that is over the cost of the venue, our net pays the deposit for a new venue. And we just roll like that. And I don't think anybody's in this for money, are they? Well, I think some people are, but I'm definitely not.
Yeah. I think for us, when you're really interested in it, it's a hobby. Probably like the equivalent of stamp collecting, isn't it? So it's like some people collect stamps, some people watching football teams around the country and stuff like that. And we go ghost hunting.
Yeah, we go and sit in the dark for hours and ask people that we can't see to do weird things. Yeah. I'll take that over football and stamps any day, though, When you're hunting, I mean, I don't really know. You take your camera with you and things, and you've mentioned Spirit Box, but what's your favourite piece of equipment you use and why?
For me, I like something that can be used as evidence. So, for example, obviously, if I'm on my own, that instantly rules out things like Ouija boards and things like that. Because obviously, when you're on your own, you can't really use those kind of things.
Yeah.
I do like the spirit box, but again, I've only really got a handful of examples when I think I've genuinely got stuff come through on it that isn't, just interview. It's going to do from a radio. The only time, though, the best example I've got from that is I did Armley Mills in Leeds about 3 years ago, and obviously, it's an old mill, an industrial mill, and all the stories are about kids. It was all kids that worked there, and children like a really young age worked in the mill, and a lot of deaths happened in there. And I got one came through and it said "Daddy" over the spirit box, but over like several sweeps. And
wow.
That's the one that I've never been able to properly get around my head. A lot of the others you can say it's radio interference, but I totally I use it, but in the back of my mind I also am aware that it's not 100% scientifically, but I use it because a lot of people want to see it in the videos.
Yeah.
Best one I do like the thermal camera.
Yeah.
I've recently just upgraded to a newer one, a bit more high definition, but I think for me, I get more from the thermal camera it's more for debunking rather than finding. So I find that, for example, when I've been in a really cold room, it's good for finding where a draft's coming in rather than finding a spirit of a figure stood in the corner. So I do take the thermal camera everywhere. What else do I like? I pick and choose. So I'll tailor it towards whatever area I'm going into.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. What equipment I use depends on where I am.
Yeah.
And what the vibe of the place is, or so for example, if I'm hunting somewhere where I know there's quite a lot of reported children activity, then I'll use different equipment than I would in a prison.
Yeah, absolutely. I must admit, I do prefer I've got the voice recorder as well. I do like doing EVP sessions where I'm asking questions and playing back and seeing what I can find on it. Again, a lot of people talk about the cat balls. Again, they're very sensitive, and you can use them pretty much anywhere, and they're only about £2 to buy from a supermarket, so they're dead cheap. So I do have a set of those that I take around. For me, I always started off as a very much an eyes and ears person. So if you listen to the very first ghost hunts we ever used to do, years ago, back in radio days, it's just literally us. We didn't take any equipment other than the modern equipment, and it was all just eyes and ears. So we launched Dead Air 14 years ago. So we did a place in Newcastle called the Cooperage, which has since been derelict ever since. No one's ever got into it. It's been empty, just rotting away. But it's meant to be the most haunted pub in Newcastle. And we were the only paranormal team that's ever done it. And we did it as a Halloween show. And yet that night we heard the toilet flush upstairs when there was nobody upstairs. No, we heard the hand dryer in one of the toilets come on. We probably got more from that night without any equipment. And that was just eyes and ears and hearing something walking across the ceiling above us, things like that. But then the flip side of that is that if you just do that on YouTube, people just get bored. People are like, oh, just someone sitting in a room on their own.
Yeah.
I totally get the pros and cons of it. People, I think in today's day and age, when the way paranormal TV shows have gone, people want to see certain methods of ghost hunting. People don't want the whole, I'll just sit here. Because in theory, you could take a drink and some sandwiches and just go and sit in a haunted building for 12 hours. But that would be boring for anyone watching it. I totally get it. But at the same time, it still can be an effective way. Just you and just talking to yourself and just seeing if anything interacts or anything happens, I suppose. But yeah, I suppose you've kind of got to draw a line somewhere in the middle and say it's got to be entertaining for people to watch and people to take part in, but at the same time, it's got to have that element of, is it effective?
Absolutely. I find when we're on team only hunts, we spend a lot more time sat silently or kind of doing very kind of back to basics, I'd say, ghost hunting. On a public hunt, you've got to have that, as you kind of say, that entertainment value where there are different bits of kit that people haven't experienced and haven't used or have seen on telly and want to use for the first time, So yeah, there's definitely, I think you fit your equipment and even your investigation style to the situation you're in, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, when we do our public events, I mean, I know one of the things that the group love doing are human pendulums.
Yeah.
But I'm absolutely like not interested in them at all. So usually when they're doing that, I just go and sit down. Someone else takes over and runs the session, because it's just my philosophy and belief on it is that it's not something that you could use as paranormal evidence, because you'll always have that in the back of your mind that someone's deliberately swaying themselves, or it's not scientific. Whereas I'm more of the belief that like what you need to capture is scientific for scientific research. So, but everyone's different. Everyone's got their own, and I would never sort of disrespect someone and tell someone that what they're doing is wrong or whatever. Everyone's just got their own sort of approach to it.
Absolutely, and the more methods we use and the different technology we use, it only adds to the kind of growth of it and the evidence of it, because as much as, if you're there with your thermal imaging camera showing hot spots and cold spots, and you've got somebody, in a circle saying, this particular area is really cold, great, you've got personal experience, and then you've got the physical side, where you can see that cold spot,
Yeah, exactly.
And I think when they go hand in hand like that, it's a brilliant mixture. But then half the night you do spend just sometimes sat watching something going, please do the thing, please.
We've got a guy who sometimes comes along the while out of it. He won't mind me saying this, but we've got a guy who builds his own stuff. So like he's built things, and he brings them to some of our events, and like he's a great guy. But he'll build like the car off Ghostbusters or something. He'll find like a kid's toy and he'll pull all the bits out of it, build like an EMF meter inside it or something, and he sees himself as a bit of a scientist, so he'll bring stuff along. I've just created this, and you're like, oh, right, okay, we'll use that later on. But yeah, it's like I totally I get it. Like people, I suppose that's how a lot of companies that build a lot of paranormal stuff work. They like use teddy bears and whatever. It's all fine. If someone wants to build something, have a go at it.
But to me, that makes more sense, because I've spoken about this amongst our team. But, so for example, like REM pods, obviously the traditional looking REM pod is that, black kind of cylindrical shape with the antenna, isn't it? That's what a standard REM pod looks like. If you're a spirit from hundreds of years ago, that is going to look awfully unapproachable, because you don't know what it is. It looks really funny. If you were to put that inside of an old clock, or as the guy that comes along with you do, a toy or something, for me that would, in my mind, increase the the chance of activity, because it's a more accessible item. It's a recognisable item.
That's exactly what I would say, because a lot of people use like mobile phone apps. I'm not against them, but some of them you need to get interesting responses from them. But I'll always like debate it with people, and I'll say, like, if I died of the plague 400 years ago and I came here, I wouldn't even know what that phone is in your hand. So how do I get responses out of that are sort of within code on a circuit chip board inside that phone? And I'm like, I'll have this conversation. Like, if I died 400 years ago, how do I work that? How do I operate that? And then people kind of look at you going, well, I totally get it. Like, but then again, you also sometimes do get interesting responses from some of the phone apps as well. So again, like, I've always been skeptical of them, but I totally know what you mean when you say, how would someone from an older year, hundreds of years ago, understand what this modern equipment is?
Yeah, absolutely, and feel safe enough, or inclined enough to go and interact with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what is your goal in hunting the paranormal?
I think from a selfish point of view, I want to be that person who like delivers that kind of piece of evidence that is something that proves it. There is such things as ghosts, for example. And I get it, it's hard. Even though we've all got camera phones, every single one of us has a camera on us. So in theory, you used to hear stories where people saying, well, I was locking up late one night and I turned around and there was a woman there in a dress or whatever, just walked through the wall. You think, well, now everyone's got phones. These things you would think would start to be getting recorded a lot more, but they're not. So I think the goal for me would be to capture that, to have that piece of evidence that is not debunkable.
Yeah.
I.e., literally the apparition of a man or a woman or lady in white or literally whatever stood there, clear as day. So it's not like a shadow. It's not like when people zoom in on things, you can see a face and this, and it's like you squint at it and you go, possibly, but it has to be like an actual apparition. And I know how hard that sounds. Like, you think the chances of even seeing something are remotely difficult, but I think ultimately that is what you want to do.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I've always said, like, if I have a picture or a video of a person, full person stood in front of me that I know isn't there, that'll be when I'm like, I've done it. I've achieved it. It's not yet happened.
So, I mean, for me, I think it was 2015, me and my friend that I did the radio show with, we were driving back from a battlefield in Otterburn in Northumberland, and it was about 11:30 at night, and we were just driving along the road, and we saw, well, I saw it, he didn't, because I was in the passenger seat, we just saw this guy at the side of the road, and I literally said to him, he just nearly ran that guy over, and he said, what guy? I said, there's a man stood literally there. This is on a country road in the middle of absolutely nowhere. So we were joking on, saying, it could be a phantom hitchhiker. And we actually joked about it. I said, turn the car around. I bet there's a guy stood at the side of the road back there. I'm joking, he's not a real person. So we turned the car around, we drove back along the road, and there was a guy stood there, and he had a uniform on, and he had a helmet under his arm. And we both just stared at this guy, like we drove literally driving at 5 miles an hour and going past it. And I said, sure, there's a guy there. Like, you can see him. And he said, oh, yeah. We're recording it as well. We've got the video of it. So we turned the car around again, thinking he's now going to be on our side of the road again. Is this like some guy hitching a ride? We were like so excited about it in the car, and then he was gone. And that video, it went, I think it was the Sun, the Mirror, the Daily Mail, all the local newspapers ran with it at the time. And all those paranormal shows, like Paranormal Caught on Camera, have since like used it. But it's always been in the back of my mind that it might just be a real person who just happened to be stood there. So it's bothered me ever since. The video is clear, someone stood there. And to us, that was like, so the backstory of it was, we sent it into a local newspaper and said we found this guy who looks like a pilot stood at the side of the road. And they ran the story. They worked out the location where it was, and there was an RAF crash in 1942 in a field, literally on the other side of the hedge where this was. And for us, we were like, that's definitely the ghost of a Second World War pilot. And then, obviously, you know how toxic the comment section of like a newspaper be. It was all the way down. We literally like laughed at ourselves. We read the comments underneath, and we were like, God, they just made it up. You know, it was just like some guy wearing a uniform that got to stand up the side of the road and stuff. And we were laughing at all these comments coming in. Someone said, they went up to record at Otterburn battle site, which is obviously where there's a barracks. That was like 40 miles away. Like, just someone who just walks down from the army barracks. I'm like, but in our minds, we definitely thought we saw something that night. But because the figure was so solid, everyone's just like a normal person. In a way, we kind of would have preferred it if it was like a translucent see-through figure, like your stereotypical ghost. But and again, we thought we had it, and we're like, well, maybe it's not. Maybe we just want that proof of something that's. But again, like in today's day and age, anything can be fake. So it's like, do you want that photograph of a Victorian child that people go, well, it's just an app that you just downloaded and photoshopped a figure in? Like it's so easy to do.
Yeah, but I think
how would you do?
We're always going to have, I don't think any amount of evidence in this world is going to make everybody 100%. There's people that don't believe kind of the norm now. Like the Earth is flat. Like there's never going to be 100% consensus, is there? You're always going to have somebody in the comments, as you said, like, no, it's not this, or you've used AI or whatever. And it's a tough one, but for me, as long as I know that it's true and real, then I'll be happy.
Yeah, it's like, how good do you want it to be? Because you can capture a bit of evidence that's so good, like it would be so perfect that it's not good enough. You kind of it's the best pictures are the ones that are like, don't know whether it's a ghost or not. Yeah, if you got something that's so definitively like a person stood there, it just makes it too good that it's not real. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It is a tough one. As much as we want all of that, like what to us is really good evidence, at the same time we want things that are believable to other people. It is tough.
Yeah, I suppose to be, like I said, from a selfish point of view, you'd rather just know for yourself that it's what it is. Maybe not to be bothered about what the rest of the human population think, but as long as you are adamant that what you captured was what you think it is, then that's probably the best thing. You can at least go home that night and know that you've got an answer, I suppose. But I don't think you'll ever be able to convince 7 billion people that what you've captured is a ghost. But
Nope.
yeah.
So, final question. Do you 100% believe in spirits?
I don't know, because I do, but I was just thinking about this the other day, because when I was saying before that I love going to places on my own, I was thinking that I think the reason I do that is because I don't believe that there's something else in there. So it sounds crazy, but if I genuinely believed there was an invisible entity, maybe say it's a house, for example, if I genuinely believed there was an entity in that house, whether it be an old Victorian man or the grey lady or whatever, who could see me and follow me around that house, I wouldn't go in it.
Yeah,
I
that's
wouldn't go in it. So I do believe it in a way that I want to believe it, but I think if I genuinely thought that was real, I'd be like, I'm not going in there. I think that's why I'm able to do a lot of these lone vigils, is because I convince myself that it's either not going to happen, Casper's not going to walk through that wall, or if it does happen, I've captured it. So it's like I've got something from it that would be groundbreaking. But I don't know. I think I do sit on the fence, but I'd probably say it's maybe I want to believe and I want to desperately believe, but I convince myself before I do an investigation that there's nothing there. You'll be fine. You won't get hurt. Nothing's going to happen. You're in a building on your own. That kind of thing. So I think I don't know. I still think I need to find more out.
Yeah.
Capture more. I don't think there's going to ever be a day where I'm like 100% I believe in ghosts, but then again, I will never not believe, because I've always had an interest in it, where I've always wanted to believe that there's something there, from being like 3 or 4 years old to now. So I think the way people believe in ghosts now is different. So now people will be satisfied if they left the building because they got some interesting results in a novelist, for example.
Yeah.
Well, back in the day, you had to get like proper knocks, footsteps, to come out of a building and go, that was weird. I think the way, obviously, we consume a lot of like paranormal TV, it changes what you believe in. So do people still see ghosts? I mean, when's the last time someone's told you a ghost story and said, like, literally, like from this year, said, I've seen a man, or I saw this grey lady. Like, people don't really talk about stuff like that as much. Whereas before, the ghost stories were all about like seeing things. That's an interesting the way paranormal TV has changed what people expect to see on a ghost hunt. But
absolutely, because I think those ghost stories are still a thing. I think they do still happen, but I think now it's not enough.
yeah,
Me saying to you, I saw, Joe Bloggs in front of me, walked through the room. It was amazing. He was wearing this and describing perfectly. I don't think for the majority of people now that consume paranormal media, that would be enough.
It's like the most famous ghost story, isn't it? Is the guy who was in York in the cellar of the treasurer's house, and saw the Roman army walk through. He said they were all cut off by the feet because there was obviously a Roman road underneath. He said you could only see them up to like the knees, and then later on they found there was a road underneath that explained everything. And that's one of the most famous ghost stories of like the last century. And yet now, if somebody said that, people would just think you're crazy. People would you'd probably get laughed at. Whereas that story, when he told it, was taken seriously.
Yeah.
I think it's harder now to, if you saw a ghost, to tell what you saw and be believed. I think it's a lot harder.
The parameters of what evidence is now have massively shifted.
Yeah,
massively.
Exactly. That's the best way to word it. I'm trying to think, like, classic. I mean, the story that I always got told on my grandmother's side is one of the best ghost stories. I mean, it's personal, but it's one of the best ghost stories. So her uncle was basically, he died in a mining disaster. There was 3 people drowned when one of the mines flooded. That was in like 1901. So in 1940, during the Second World War, she stayed at home and ran. And my biological grandfather, he was away fighting in the army, and he was involved in the D-Day landings. But obviously back here, they didn't know D-Day was happening because it was very secret. They didn't tell the population what the plans were. So she just knew he was away. And then she locked the shop up one night, and she was just sitting in like a back room. And she said a man walked into the shop and said, "Where's Ronnie?" And she said, because Ronnie's my grandfather's name. And she said, "Oh, he's in France." And he said, "All right, okay." And he turned around and walked out. And she just realised, hang on, the shop's locked. Like, nobody could have walked in that shop. So she put the light on and looked for this guy who walked in the shop, and he was gone. And there was nobody there. But when he realised, like months later, who that guy was, she remembered his face. When she saw a photo, it was her uncle who died in the mining disaster. Like, 40 years before. She saw his face. And so anyway, she got the telegram the next day that said that, or it was a few days later, that said that Bonnie had been injured in, I think, like a bomb had exploded. His job was to use the metal detectors and find the bombs so that the beach invasion could happen. So she knew that he'd been injured. This is days after she'd seen this apparition. And then about a week and a half later, she got a telegram saying that he died in a field hospital in France. But the date he died was the same day that she saw this apparition.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, she's always believed it up until the day she died. She's, in her 90s, that she believed that what she saw was a sign. And it was someone from the spirit world coming to look for him. And obviously, I used to hear the story as a toddler, and it used to fascinate. Every time I went to the house, I would be like, "Oh, tell me the story." And then I would say, "What did he look like? What was he wearing? Was he see-through? Could you see through him?" I was just constantly, and I think that's where my interest sort of came. But it was just that, the fascination that someone's told me a ghost story, and I want to know what exactly they saw. And every time she would try and remember bits, and she would say, "Oh yeah, he said this," and then I would say, "Oh, so did he walk through the wall?" She would say, "Oh no, he walked back." I was just constantly wanting to know. And I think those stories don't happen. You don't hear people say these kind of things. You hear lots of people die every day in accidents and whatever, but you don't hear stuff like that, which I think it's quite sad. It's like they're quite interesting, even if she dreamt it. It's still quite a really cool story. But I know you mean, it's changed. Like, these kind of things aren't the way people talk about ghosts anymore.
No, not at all. And it is a shame. I think that, and again, because we're so public with all of our information, people might still be telling people, but personally, until I started D.C.P.I. and, talking so openly about what I do, if I'd have seen something, I wouldn't let people know. I wouldn't have posted it. Do you know what I mean? I'd post a picture because, again, the comment section and what people are like.
Yeah, I think as well, I mean, you'll know this, is that there is a lot of people in the industry who do talk a lot of rubbish, who will, I always believe that the belief in the paranormal is like a massive spectrum itself. So you get people who will literally believe everything. You get people who are completely skeptics, and then you've got people who are on various parts of this ladder, essentially. But the people who are very much like everything's paranormal, like I can see a face in that wall or whatever. I've just taken a photo of this graveyard and you can see a face inside this. Everything's paranormal, and it kind of makes you, I don't want to be associated with people like that. If I talk about it, I kind of want to be taken seriously if I had a story to tell.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's disrespectful. I totally, everyone's entitled to their own belief, but I always think that a lot of people who, that people who, a lot of the photos you see in the newspapers where it's like family took a photo of a castle on a day out and saw this soldier, and you look at the photo and it's not a soldier, but the Sun publish it because it's like it sells clicks basically. And you don't want to go down. I don't want to go down that route. I don't want to be like everything's a ghost.
Yeah.
But you kind of want to be. You want to have that respect so that when you do see a ghost, you're believed.
Absolutely. I'm totally with you on that.
I would say I'm probably about either 60-70% do believe.
Good percentage.
It was a conversation I had years ago in Derby with Richard Felix from Most Wanted, and he's kind of the best for phrasing it. Is that there might be something that's paranormal. It might not be a ghost, but it's just something that we don't scientifically know yet. And I kind of like the idea that maybe it's not dead people doing stuff. It's something that's, I don't know, some kind of energy or some kind of, scientifically we haven't sort of worked out yet. Whether it's, like I said, it's the ghost of a dead plague victim or whatever. But I kind of like that idea as well.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, absolutely. Especially because, from evidence, from personal experience, there seems to be different types of hauntings. There seems to be, it would be great to know, wouldn't it? And that's what we're all trying to do, really, is find those answers that seem impossible to find.
Whether that'll happen in our lifetimes, you think, well, how far have we come in 10, 20 years with the most haunted generation?
Yeah.
We think about when we're old, when in nursing homes or whatever, have they what stage of the paranormal field will they have? It'll be completely different, I think. But
absolutely.
Ouija boards in Victorian times to sign electrical gadgets and all sorts. But Who knows what it'll one day look like.
As long as I can maybe catch something that can be a part of that change, then I'm there for it.
But it's an interesting belief, isn't it, that a lot of the reason don't get stuff on paranormal nights, like we mentioned earlier, is a ghosts theme. You might not know how to use equipment, which is why when I'm doing stuff, I always will over-explain it and say this is how this works.
Yeah.
If you want it. Because you get a lot of people who switch things on and assume that a ghost will know how to use it. But I always think if we die and we come back, that we'll be able to come through because we know how all this stuff works. But
that's a good point. That's a really good point.
We would know how the REM pod works, so we could just go and play with it. But
just constantly tap it so it makes the really annoying noise endlessly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we all hope for, but at the same time, the noise is annoying.
Yeah. Probably be better at communicating with it, but yeah.
Well, it's like you ask, isn't it? You ask them, like after a little while of it going off, you're like, okay, can you step away from it for a minute? Thank you.
I suppose with that in mind, when you've got people that you want to communicate with in light, you say, well, I'll train you up on how to use this equipment, so when you die, come back and talk to me.
Yeah. We'll always do one buzz for yes, two buzz for no. That's how we'll do it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for joining us, Rob, and we look forward to following what you're up to next. All of Rob's links will be posted, so you can go follow him, support, see what he's up to, and follow his crazy, although scary, adventures on his own. So thanks for coming, Rob.
Thanks for having me on. It's been fun to talk to you.
No worries, and hopefully we'll speak to you again soon. Bye.
Definitely, bye.